Thank you, Ollie, for joining our podcast. Appreciate your time. Would you like to please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Ollie Copperwood, and I am the CEO of a company called P3 Consulting Services.
Awesome. And I was, looking at your story, and I know that you supported the government. What was your first experience with the government, the federal government?
Absolutely. So I was a Marine. So that's the first experience with the federal government right out of high school. I did 4 years active duty. Then from there, went to college, got a undergrad, got a master's. And my first job, a real job, was at NAVSUP Weapons Systems Command in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, as a federal employee.
So what did you study? What is your grad and you said undergrad and grad? What did you study?
So we first got a English because and I was figuring I like to read, I like to write. This makes a natural assimilation, Okay, English with an emphasis on literature, right? So you'll see me quote Shakespeare quite a bit in some of our in some of my talks. But then I went and got a master's in communications from a place called Shippensburg University, right in central Pennsylvania.
So Marine Corps, first thing. Second stop?
Second stop, NAVSUP.
NAVSUP. Awesome. So how many years? Tell me a little bit more about NAVSUP.
So we started NAVSUP, and it was interesting because I had a master's, and I was hoping when I first got there, and this is, gosh, in 2012. When I first got there, I said, oh, okay, I can start in on a higher ladder. I've got a master's. I got work experience from the Marines. And they said, no, you got to pay your dues. And you got to start as a 7-step 6. And that's the best we can do. And so I started working in the Office of Public Information it was really communication for the whole base, the whole weapon systems there. Learned quite a bit because you get to work with the chief of the supply corps. And kind of, it's a 2-star, which is a very prestigious kind of role there because he's taking care of all the supplies that come through the Navy and just figuring out messaging for him. So I started there. From there, I had a short stint in TSA working for the community and headquarters in Arlington. I was still living in Mechanicsburg, and I traveled because I wanted to be promoted. And I traveled from Mechanicsburg to Arlington, Virginia, with a 6-gear Jeep Wrangler.
Wow. So you were living in Pennsylvania and working. Yeah, I have been in Arlington, TSA. Yeah. I know where it is. So, but not every day, right?
Oh, every day until NAVSUP called me back and said, hey, we've got another job here that will give you the 9, 11, and 12. We'll give you the step ladder. I said, why'd you let me leave in the first place and do this for 6 months in TSA? And then just how things work out in hiring. Somebody had left and they thought about me and called me back. And so I came back to Mechanicsburg.
Commute from Pennsylvania. I used to Pennsylvania like an hour or more, probably, right?
2 hours each way, depending on the rush hour. So I would get up at 3 a.m. to get down, and then I wouldn't leave till 7 p.m. And then I restarted all over again.
And that is a little bit too much. I never heard something like that.
I was very determined. I was going to figure it out until I could move because the job kind of, USA Jobs, they said, hey, you got the job. And I was determined to move up. But luck had it that I could come back. Funny thing is, though, while I was coming back, I had the 11, a leadership program came open called New Leaders. USDA was running it. And I joined that program, and one of it was a rotation. I tried to do Starbucks because some of the Navy officers were able to do Starbucks rotation, but that was only for officers. So I went to the base commander and said, sir, I'm trying to do a rotation. What are your ideas? And he says, I know a guy named Elliot Branch, who is the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy in Acquisitions, Research and Development. I'm going to send you down there to work with him. And what he told me is he said, don't come back, though. He said, if I send, because he had to authorize it, and there was a lot of travel, there was a lot of lodging and the per diem. And he said, look, we're going to make an investment in you. But once you get down to the Pentagon, you got to find your own way. And so that's a daunting task. I was already scheduled for the 12, but I just wanted more. I just figured I had more to offer. And I was always interested in how the government talked to industry when the contracts and the procurements, how we put requirements out. That always interests me, even working in public information. And so when I got with Mr. Branch, I met a woman named Emily Harmon, who was the director of the Small Business Office for the Navy. And she would come in to do like media training because she was trying to expand the administration. I'm sorry, she was trying to expand the industrial base and not be beholden to only big contractors, i.e., let's say we had to build a ship. Well, can small business do any piece of this work? And it was her mission to go across the country and try to expand that mission. I met up with her and she said, I need a PAO person. I need someone who can direct this outreach and go on the road and talk to small businesses and and teach them. And we need research to figure out what money's being spent, and we need to give that message to the community. And that's how I got into small business. And from there, kind of, I always had a love for it. Now I'm on the other side of it, the small business owner after having taught it to small businesses. So it's kind of a full circle.
So first of all, USMC, Marine Corps, that was the first. Then NAPSA,
Yes.
Pennsylvania. Now, you were doing communications of their weapon system. You said communications of what? What type of communication you do for a weapon system? Who receives those communications?
So for this one, it's both industry and both internal. Because we want the workforce. We wanted to talk to small business professionals. We wanted to talk to the workforce to let them know, here's what we're doing.
I was asking about your first stop in NAPSA. Is that what you're talking about? Interesting. Oh, so from the beginning you were with the communication with industry.
Yep, from the beginning.
Okay, I got you. Okay, please continue. What were you doing there? Your first stop in the NAPSA.
So NAPSA, it's workforce communications primarily. That's the hub of it. Talking to the sailors, the Marines, the families. Hey, NAVSUP's doing this. This is how we're making your lives better, right? That was the first. But we also taught the industry and saying, hey, the Navy's buyers. Here's what we're doing from NAVSUP. Business, NAVSUP has different kind of entities. So another entity was business support centers. Those are the buyers. Those where the small business professionals live. Hey, here's what we're buying. We would develop craft messages for them as well to try to get that word out.
And then a short stop in TSA, the long commute, and then back in NAVSUP with communications again. Was that your job?
Back to my same group. They just had a position that opened up, but I had joined a new leadership program at that time because that would help. They were offering, they said, hey, anybody want to offer, you'll gain leadership experience. It will prepare you to be a senior leader in the government, right? So I took that on. They let me do it because they didn't have to do it, of course, because it costs money to invest in a person. But
USDA.
I'm sorry?
Where was the leadership training? Where was that?
It was in DC. So I was living in Mechanicsburg. It was at USDA, the headquarters here in DC.
Okay. So you went back to a little bit the same group, and then Elliott Branch. What was that?
So how that happened was when I wanted. So part of the leadership programs, you do a rotation outside of your office to learn a skill that you think will help you develop yourself as a leader. First, it was Starbucks. I wanted to go there, but I couldn't because it was only for naval officers.
I don't know what that is. What is that?
Starbucks, the company, Starbucks, the coffee company.
Oh, interesting.
And they had a leadership program they would teach you how, CEO, logistics, finance, all those things how their senior leaders in logistics learn how to be kind of that track. Well, NAVSUP, it made sense. Okay, that's why we're having our officers do that. But I wasn't eligible for that. So I went to the vice commander of NAVSUP. His name was John Goodhart. Mm-hmm. He was a civilian, and I was trying to brainstorm. I said, sir, I want to do some things. I'm trying to move ahead, and I've got good ideas. He says, I know a guy named Elliott Branch, and I'm going to send you to him. I'm going to call him and see if he'll take you on. And because you have this interest in understanding how we can communicate better with industry, he's the perfect mentor. And so that's how I got down to the Pentagon. In the basement, that's where the acquisitions was, research development.
What year was that in the Pentagon? What year?
I'd say 2016.
2016. And you were in the Pentagon for how long?
I was there for about 3 months.
Okay.
While I was there, I was shadowing Mr. Branch, but I also was shadowing the Navy's information office. And a woman named Emily Harmon came in, and it was the new SES over the Navy Small Business Office. And she was trying to do the things we were talking about, but she just needed the communication arm. She didn't know how to do the outreach to small businesses. She was a small business professional contracting officer, and she needed to get the communications and the outreach piece. And me and her teamed up to go teach small businesses how to do business with the Navy.
I know that. Yep. Her name. Yep. Where is she now?
And she had a woman named Arvise Washington, which was her deputy. She ended up becoming the small business director. So I worked with both of those ladies, and we did some good, at that time in 2017, that's the first Trump administration. They came in, they were really trying to streamline, not as much as this one was, but they're trying to streamline and say, hey, we can't spend all this money in one place. Where can small business plug in at? Are they capable? So we need y'all to go tell the story to make sure that capable small businesses come into the fold and get into the industrial base so we can start saving money, but also giving small business opportunities to showcase themselves.
Okay, and all of these really prepare you for where you are right now.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the news, let's say, the environment right now for companies. What do you think changed in the last year or 2 years for companies to grow, to succeed, in the government contracting world?
Well, a group called Doge came in and changed some of the landscape. But to be honest with you, Ezekiel, this is not a new concept. Doge is not new. It was they always had off under the Obama administration. They had Office of Efficiency. Carter had Office of Efficiency. Reagan, Bush, they all have those in government. And when I was at NAFSA, they had something called Fraud Busters, and you can make a call. And there was we had posters, a big red telephone, and said if you see fraud, waste, and abuse, you can call right and call this number. And it had a number that you can call. So none of this is new. The only thing is the emphasis now is on it and the method and how it was done. So industry has to adjust to the method, not really the tactic. And the premise, if I'm going to be very honest with you, the premise I agree with. We on the premise, the methodology behind it, maybe we have to have some conversation on how you execute a thing, because just as important as what you do is how you do it. And so the demand signal for industry now is to show value. Before, it was assumed that that value was there. Now I need to tell you that value is there and show you in a, I would say, let's say a consulting service. What changes, instead of me providing solution, I need to also provide the solution and then the implementation, how you're going to actually execute it. Whereas I can just give you my opinions, whether you take it or not, no problem. Now the government has cut and streamlined so much, even some of the federal people, that we have to execute as well as bring the solution. That's shops that can execute and say, here's how it's going to, almost like an intellectual architect that connect the dots for the government, where they lost some of those senior people. Now industry can come in and do that. Before it was just let us consult and let us give you our recommendations, our reports, and we did our job. That's not the environment anymore. So I think that's the real shift there.
Any challenges that you think other small businesses are going through for growth, BD, relationship? I'm a BD guy, so I love this topic. And maybe your company as well is going through. But in general, what do you think are the main challenges for companies to grow?
So one of the things that companies is the research component and being able to develop the relationship. And my company is called P3. People, process, partnership. This is the age of partnership. It's not the age of stand alone, especially as a small business with no name recognition or small footprint. There's dollars to go around. There's opportunity. I'll call it opportunity instead of money, because people chase money. Chase opportunity. The money will follow, right? There's opportunity, but now the opportunity might be 60-40, 70-30, right? Whereas you could go chasing, I'm going to get it all myself. Maybe there's to give the best service, to get into the door, to whatever you plug in. Maybe a partnership is best here. Then get your footing, because eventually the smalls will graduate to mids, right? And then you come in with your experience doing it. There's opportunity. You just got to understand the partnership landscape, one. So that's a challenge. People don't want to do that. They want to, a territorial thing, thinking that there's no room for sharing or no room to partner. The second challenge is, once you get that experience, when you go in front of the government, how do you market yourself? Do you understand their problem, or are you looking for a problem to solve? That's a challenge with people. If you're looking for a problem to solve, you'll never get into that door. You'll just be cold calling. But if you understand their challenge and can demo something, what do you have that actually solves our problem? And then be able to demonstrate that.
You make a difference between looking for a problem to solve or already knowing what problem to solve. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So if I'm looking for a problem to solve, I've got this X, Y, and Z tool, and this tool will do X, Y, and Z, right? Okay. Yeah, but is the X, Y, and Z something the government has demanded, has put a signal out, right? Is there a demand signal for it? Or do you think it's just a good idea?
I know what you're saying. Hey, have this solution. Please find a problem for me so I can make some money if you find the. No, industry needs to figure out what problem their solution can solve. I get it. So you're saying research. What do you mean by research when you said the challenge of research?
Absolutely. So the research, for example, I know that certain contracts are coming up, right? You can look at Forecast. You can look at SAMs. You can go to industry events and listen to what the buyer is talking about. The research, but also then who's buying what? Because if I go to VA, that's almost okay. Let me go to the small business office and contact them. That's fine. But have you the program office that's buying the thing is better because now I know this program office buys this. Now when I go to the small business professional, hi, I've done research on here's our company. This is what we do. We've researched the type of buys that are coming out of this sector of VA. We believe we have a solution that can do X, Y, and Z. We would love a conversation with the program office to discuss this solution. Now we've got the research. They know that we did our due diligence. Or let's tie it to RFI. We recently responded to this RFI. Our researchers told us that these type of requirements are desired by the government. We believe we have a solution that can help plug in buzzwords, streamline, centralize, right, etc. for this problem. We would love a conversation with the program office or the buyer associated, et cetera, right, to discuss this further. The research, you have to know, you have to come back behind it. The first thing in small business, what I would ask you as a small business professional, did you respond to the sources sought? Okay, you did. So I know that you're looking at our solicitations. Now, have you done research in USA Spin, FPDS, HireGov to find out how we've historically bought these things? Now, do you have something that makes us worth? I'm not trying to sell you anything if I'm a small business. I'm trying to provide you a solution and provide services and solution, not selling. I'm not selling the product. And I think that's a differentiator that small business need to kind of, even if it is a product, the product provides a solution. What is that solution providing?
Hey, what was one of the best practices that you have seen? Because we always talk sometimes we talk about the bad things, people not showing up in form, showing up and expecting the small business person to just solve their lives. But what are the best things? Can you remember any company that did something so brilliant, so smart that you said, wow, these people are smart?
One company came to us, they came to us with that, right? They had already framed the problem. They had already researched, right? They set the table that way. But when they got to the meeting, they had 4 slides. Here's who we are. Here's the demand statement we're trying to do. Here's a solution. Now let's demo what we've got.
Demo.
Let us show you behind the hood of what we have. And then the follow-up slide, they had the 5th slide. Actually, they had 5. And the one was, here's how it plugs into your environment. We've already addressed the organizational concerns about whether it be cybersecurity, right? Whether it be how it can plug in if it was a tool. This is how we can do it and plug it in. We'll use Microsoft, we'll use ServiceNow, but they have done the research. They already know what the organization has. So they can already overcome the barrier of integration. That was the best way to do it because now you told us who you are and why you started. The story, right? I need to feel comfortable about you as a company. Do you have a good story? Do you have something that makes you stand out? Yes, I was a former Fed. Yes, I was a Marine. I'm doing this because we saw the government had a certain need for this, and that was my drive. So that's the first thing. That's okay. Now I know who you are a little bit. 2, do you understand our problem? 3, what's the solution? 4, show me. 5, now that we've got all the show, oh, we really like it, but can it integrate? We answered that too on the last slide. This is how we would put it in.
So what you're saying is these people were crisp, they were brief, they knew the environment and the demo. You did like the demo part.
Yep, the demo. Yep. I saw what was behind the hood. And now I know that you've already researched whether we can use it or not. Because it could be a great demo, but that doesn't fit our environment. Now I know it does. So that company already overcame all the barriers needed to do business. Now let's do a pilot.
Let's talk about introductions to the program office. You mentioned that a couple of times. I feel a lot of times people believe that the job of the small business is to introduce companies to the program office. That's not the case. But my theory is that, or the way I like to think about it, is that they're going to introduce you if they're going to look good, if they feel, if they know, they understand that they're helping. But if people show up, no clue, but you have any thoughts on best practices for getting to meet with the program office?
So if I'm a small business office, there's a couple ways to do this. You could look on LinkedIn and figure out who that person is, right? They're going to speak. Okay, I saw them, and if I can get the contact that way, right? Without giving all my secrets away. I know I went to a small business event for veterans, and a program office was there talking about what they're trying to do in acquisition support, how they're trying to streamline. That's something I'm interested in because I was in acquisitions. So how they're trying to consolidate software. That person was there. I saw it. They had their email right on the slide. That's the program office. Yes, I'm going to tie in a small business director there because, that is good practice. Put them and them on there and then say, hey, we have this. We saw you here, right? Also for the small business office, let's say you don't have that meeting, or you didn't go and saw them at an event. When I go to the small business office, I'm going to say, I know the problem again, research. Can you make an introduction here? Is there any opportunity to meet this? Because we have the solution. to that problem. We've researched it heavily, and we believe this will be a value add. Now, the Ostabu is going to be like, absolutely, because they're going to meet their numbers. We got a small business in the ecosystem that can do this. One thing they're going to ask you, are you in our supplier register? Be there first before you. HHS has one. Let's say we're going to HHS, be there. Yes, we've already applied to that. We've already put our information there, but we've heard this here and we have a solution for that. So getting to the program office that buys what you're selling, the department, whoever that may be, small business, the Ostabu probably is your best way to do as a small business, but have something to offer. Why should we do?
Yeah, right.
What makes you different? Why you? So
Yeah.
your research.
I
That's
think
why.
don't do and I'll ask you about how you differentiate your offerings, but a lot of times companies really they didn't think about it. They don't think about it too much. What is your offering? Who are you supporting right now? What are your plans for the future? How do you differentiate your offering?
Absolutely. So the same practice that I'm telling small business do, I got to take it and take my own medicine, right? Researching. So right now we're with HHS. We've got a small contract there, working in the OCIO shop, helping them with some of their modernization, helping them with some of the consolidation and centralization. Program management, right? That's our bread and butter. Governance, modernization, those three things. What I like to call ourselves is a decision support company. We help make great decisions. How? Well, our name, people, process, partnership. Do I have the right people aligned to the requirement that the government has? Are the right processes, once I get the right people there, are the processes right so that the people can actually do what we need to meet that requirement? 3, do I have the partnership with the federal person or the program office necessary so that we can actuate change and do what we're supposed to do? They may have us just counting beans, right? Sometimes the government just needs people to count beans. What I mean by just, hey, we already got to figure it out, just execute.
Right.
What makes us different and what makes a company like me different is while we're counting those beans, we're going to do it in the most efficacious, effective way possible. We're going to continuously process and improve so that your bean counting process can be streamlined and shortened. And we may be able to take on something else here while we're doing that because we found an efficient way to count this for you. So it's a continuous process improvement to the program management, not just manage this in and out. And that's easy. X, Y, and Z company can do that. Do you get better as an organization because of our program management approach?
Now, if you're hired to count beans and the PWS say count beans, how do you expand?
So once you show that, so that's where you have to have the partnership. So that's the technology. It's all three of it. People. Do I have a person dynamic enough? Do we have staff dynamic enough to say, yeah, I'm going to count beans, but they're going to see me as proficient. I can talk to my client, the partner, show you our process and show you, hey, we can actually count this in a different way. Are you open to that? But you got to have a special type of person who has that kind of experience to be able to say, yeah, I know you had me counting beans and we're counting them, but we're counting faster. We're counting them in a more efficient way. Is there other opportunities to look at here? As well as counting beans, we're counting them, but look at our process of how we count them. Look how much better you got because of this. Then you get other opportunities. Now they can do that. What else can we do? Are there other opportunities to modernize? Right? Yeah, we got the spreadsheet that we've been using for years, which this is not government does this all too often. What if we automate this? What if we take them and make it a power application? And now instead of manually inputting, we have drop downs and we can get reports out of those things and help us get better decision support. So that's what we bring to the table. I'm going to count the beans. If that's what they want me to do, Ezekiel, that's fine. But I'm going to also say, have you considered, because our bean counting process is very sharp, it's very efficient, and it's effective. Now let's see what else we can do here, because we got an opportunity once you bring us in to do something a little bit more than that, if you so desire.
What is your vision for P3 Consulting in the next 5 or 10?
So here's my flagship thing. My flagship thing is I've always wondered, and I've seen this problem, and this is the research. How do you make an effective decision when you have multiple ones to make? What do you do first? What do you do second? What do you do third? What if there was a way to make a decision based on both qualitative and quantitative factors and defend it and make it auditable? In this day and environment, decisions are so fraught, and money and dollars are so fraught with oversight that you want to be able to say, hey, when I made a decision, here was the point in time decision I made, and here's why. We're working on a process here without giving away too much of my stuff. We're working on a process now that'll probably finish in by the end of this fiscal year that says, here's how you do that. Here's how you weight it. I got it from the Zero Trust, actually. Zero Trust has a scorecard, right, that says, here's how you rank in the pillars of Zero Trust. I was interviewing, we were showing the results, and we were going to one of the CIOs and saying, hey, we noticed that one of the pillars is lower intentionally, it looks like, and it's been lower. And it's only scored here, and you only got it to this level of maturity. And why are the other ones higher? And what the CIO said is, we made a risk-based decision based on our data on which pillars to prioritize. What if I could come up with a methodology to take that, whatever that risk-based decision, the things that were in your mind, and weight it that way, and then make it auditable using some of tools. That's where I want to take the government. And that's our management approach. Having that as my flagship to start a conversation about decision support.
So a process that provides government the ability to make risk-based decisions on pillars or areas that they have to consider in order to make.
Let's say they had to make a buy. They want to make a purchase, but I got 20 purchases to make. Which one should we make first? Which is going to be the best for the organization right now? Prioritization. So that's what I'm really looking at, a prioritization tool.
It's such one of those things that I didn't understand a few decades ago, but prioritization is such an important concept. You have so many things in your plate. What do you do? It's so hard. It's one of those things that every, not only business leaders, but, organization leaders deal with that all the time. It does resonate with me and with many, the idea of how to prioritize, such a difficult thing to do. It's a little bit of an art. Hopefully you can make it a little bit of a science. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think many people make the prioritization based on here, right? Gut, heart, or mind. I need to be able to take that out of those internal focuses and say, how do we actually make this out of a science and say, this is why we did it. And this is very defensible right now, because based on the information we had, we made that decision on this is second, third, and fourth. Now that may change in a year, but different factors, you come in and you weigh it differently and say, okay, now this is number one. We're going to backlog that one, right? You can do that through Agile, but there's not really a comprehensive method for taking the qualitative. We usually keep those diametrically opposed, qualitative and quantitative decisions. I'm going to mesh them together and say, here's why.
Ollie, thank you for your time, but I would like to, whenever you are closer to launching this, I would love to have it for part 2. If you want to explain it, you know what I mean? If you want to explain this process, this tool, or as you come closer to that, I would love to have you back. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Looking forward to the next one.